I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's do an update on the Epstein story. And the big news breaking this weekend was obviously the autopsy. Let's start with the New York Times, and let me pull up that story. And here we go. We see the New York Times, Jeffery Epstein autopsy results show he hanged himself in suicide. We could do a whole nother video, a separate video, debating the fact if he really did kill himself or if it was some sort of body double, a swapped out body, and now Epstein is, somewhere with some people talking about some stuff. Who knows? There's a lot of theories there, but let's focus on the fact that the autopsy says that it was a suicide. The debate now, Alexander, to sum it up simplistically, is that the autopsy, though it says it's conclusive, does show signs that this may have not been a suicide, given the fact that so many bones were broken and the amount of pressure and force needed to break those bones does not, coincide with something like hanging oneself off of the second bunk bed, off of the upper bunk bed. Yeah. So there's, this is a whole nother debate now going on with this autopsy, but the autopsy did say conclusively that he committed suicide. The person that is doing the autopsy is Dr. Barbara Sampson. She's the chief medical examiner in New York City. She was appointed by Bill de Blasio, Alexander. There are a lot of photos on the internet now circling around which show her with Loretta Lynch, show her with Joe Biden, and a lot of photos. And I don't think that's uncommon. I mean, she's the chief medical examiner of New York City. I'm sure she had an opportunity to meet all these Obama officials, but those photos are floating around the internet as well. And going to the Daily Beast, Alexander, we see that the Jeffrey Epstein camp, his lawyers, also managed to get a pathologist, Michael Baden, to watch over the Epstein autopsy. Baden is well known as the person that did the autopsy on JFK, and I also believe on MLK as well. So how is that fueling the fires of conspiracy theories, Alexander? What do you make of these stories?
Well, first of all, let's turn to the New York Times, because what the New York Times says is that the New York chief medical examiner's determination refutes conspiracy theories that he may have been murdered. Now, I'm going to say straight away, I think that Jeffrey Epstein is dead. I think the man who was found in that cell was indeed Jeffrey Epstein. I don't believe that he's gone off to some mysterious place, magicked out of this prison in some form. As I've said previously, if anybody had the resources to do that, they would much more likely have wanted Jeffrey Epstein out of the way in a much more permanent fashion, which is by murdering him. Having said that, I don't think he's been murdered. I personally think it is more likely that he did commit suicide. But having said all of this, I simply cannot see how the New York Times can say that the medical examiner's determination refutes the conspiracy theories. It seems to me that he does no such thing. I mean, we have had different interpretations of the autopsy results. I mean, I am not a forensic pathologist, but I understand that some people are saying that the autopsy results are not consistent with the theory of suicide that is being promoted by the New York chief medical examiner. And apparently it is being disputed by his lawyers, Epstein's own lawyers, who, as we see, are going to one of the most renowned pathologists in the United States, presumably in order to seek a second opinion. So to treat this determination as if it was, the tablets of the law or, gospel truths, that seems to me a massive stretch. But coming back to something else, even if it is true that he committed suicide in his cell, as is being alleged, that still leaves vast unanswered questions about how that came to happen. And I was reading a remarkable article by John Kiriakou, who is a former CIA officer who was actually held in prison in the United States because he became a whistleblower. And it's on Consortium News. And in that article, he describes what Suicide Watch is and how it operates. And he goes through all the fail-safes. He describes, again, all the fail-safes that needed to break down for this suicide to happen. And I'm afraid we are not going to get people accepting any explanation of how Epstein came to die, or whether indeed he is dead at all, until we have a full, convincing and irrefutable explanation of how, if this suicide theory is true, it came to happen, and how all those fail-safes fail. So for the New York Times to stand and say that the conspiracy theories have all been refuted is, frankly, at this stage, complete and total nonsense.
Okay, Alexander, from the Daily Beast, the chief medical examiner, Barbara Sampson, also noted that Epstein's representatives have hired celebrity pathologist Michael Baden to conduct an independent autopsy, and they were allowed to observe the autopsy. Baden, who served as the city's chief medical examiner in the late 1970s, has made a career investigating high-profile deaths, including those of Michael Brown, who was killed by a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri, and former New England Patriots star Aaron Hernandez. Baden also testified at the murder trials of O.J. Simpson and Phil Spector. Okay, so...
Well, there we go. I mean, are all these people, are Epstein's own lawyers, are they conspiracy theorists? Well, presumably, if you believe the New York Times, they are. But frankly, you know, let's get to the truth of this. Let's get a proper investigation sorted out, and let's get some answers. Now, I say that, I repeat, as someone who thinks he probably did commit suicide, and he almost certainly is dead. But, you know, that's opinion. I don't know. And I want to know.
The lawyers, though, are doing this, Alexander. They're not doing this so they can avoid litigation against them?
Well, probably. Well, I doubt litigation against them.
I mean, don't they want to show incompetence, or Epstein's estate? I mean, don't they want to show incompetence?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Levels, so that they can safeguard themselves and safeguard the estate.
Well, of course they can. Of course, no doubt. I've no doubt of that at all. I mean, I am sure that these lawyers have their own agenda. But all I am saying is, given the doubts are being expressed about the autopsy report and about the finding, you can't say at this stage that alternative theories have been refuted. They clearly haven't. We are still at the beginning of this investigation. And until it is explained to us exactly how what happened, or what allegedly happened, actually happened, those theories are going to continue to circulate. I repeat again, so that there's no doubt about this, I personally believe that the person in that prison cell who died is Jeffrey Epstein, and I personally believe that he did commit suicide. I say that not so much because of this autopsy report, but because it is consistent with what I know about people who find themselves in this kind of situation. And it also seems to me personally, to conform with Jeffrey Epstein's circumstances and what I've been able to glean of his personality. But these are my opinions. You know, I'd like some facts.
Because people in the comments are just going to...
I want to stress. I mean, these are opinions. I am not doing what the New York Times has done, and what perhaps this Barbara Sampson is doing. And so these opinions are gospel truth. Now, Barbara Sampson is in a different position, because obviously she is the New York medical examiner, so she is entitled to make a determination. But to say that she's entitled to make a determination doesn't mean that interpretation can't be challenged. And if people on our comments want to question or challenge my opinions, and I again stress they are opinions, they are entirely welcome to do so. And if they can prove or show to me why those opinions may be wrong, I welcome that. I am not setting myself up, as I said, as having any knowledge about this. All I am saying is, I read that article by the New York Times. I see that these so-called conspiracy theories have been refuted. And I don't see that at all. Not at this stage.
I mean, Barbara Sampson would be privy to, I mean, obviously she's privy to everything, Epstein himself and everything that supposedly happened, that day that he killed himself. But I think she would also be able to see, in order to make a conclusive decision, she would have access to any records, logs of people coming in and coming out of the prison, any videotapes. There is video somewhere out there, maybe not of the prison cell itself, but there's, video without a doubt of, say, the hallways, of the entrances and stuff like that. So I would imagine that she would have access to all those things in order to make a definitive decision as to how he died, outside of, her having the actual body to examine.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying she's wrong. All I am saying is, no doubt she's got all of this evidence. Let us see it. I mean, I think we need to see it, because I come back to something else which you said on previous programs. Jeffrey Epstein is not any prisoner. He was the single most best known prisoner in the entire United States prison system as of this time. He was the center of this vast web of allegations involving all sorts of important people. He, more than anyone else, should have been protected to make sure that he didn't die, and so that this legal process took its full course. And I repeat again what I have heard from many sources now, including very reliable sources. For him to commit suicide in the way that is being alleged, all these fail-safes needed to break down. Perhaps they did. Perhaps Barbara Sampson knows how they did. But let us see how they did. Let's see the information that proves that they did and shows how they did, so that we can form our own view. That's all I'm asking for. That's all we are entitled. But I think in this case, in this particular case, given the importance and given the issues, we are entitled to all that information.
All right, from Zero Hedge, it's official. Epstein committed suicide by hanging. Medical examiner rules. Alexander, the ruling comes after the Washington Post revealed that Epstein's autopsy found multiple breaks in his neck bones, commonly found in victims of homicide by strangulation. The hyoid bone near the Adam's apple. Epstein's blood vessels in his eyes popped when his air supply was cut off by the bed sheet that was wrapped around his neck. This, according to law enforcement sources briefed on the case. We're told he suffered petechial hemorrhaging caused when someone hangs himself or is strangled or smothered, but authorities are confident this was a hanging. We're told the bed sheets were tied to the top of a bunk bed, and Epstein either hurled himself off the top bunk or had his feet to the ground and leaned forward to cut off his air supply. Authorities believe the former is true, because throwing himself off the top bunk and falling violently to the ground could explain why his hyoid bone was fractured. And Zero Hedge closes out this article by saying that still doesn't explain the shrieking heard from Epstein's jail cell, according to reports. Alexander, wow, Business Insider, Epstein used his jail bedsheet to commit suicide while his guards slept, according to the report. What do you make of this, Alexander?
Well, first of all, can I just say, I mean, the Zero Hedge article, in contrast to the New York Times article, is impeccable reporting. It doesn't say that a medical examiner's determination has refuted the conspiracy theories. It says, and it uses the correct word, it says this is now the official view. I don't think that's disputable. It is now the official view that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. And, of course, we now have all this information, and look at how conditional it is. It talks about how we're told he suffered parachial hemorrhaging caused when someone hangs himself or is strangled or smothered. But authorities are confident. Note the word confident. This was a hanging. In other words, they have confidence. Now, confidence is not exactly. I mean, it allows a small element of doubt. Clearly, they had their strong views, and maybe they're right, but it's not, definitive. And then we also have things like authorities believe the former is true, which is to say that he jumped off the top bunk. And believe, again, is a question of belief. Belief is not definite knowledge. And then they go on to explain, because throwing himself off the top bunk and falling violently to the ground could explain why his hyoid bone was fractured. And then, of course, as the Zero Hedge again carefully says, this still doesn't explain the shrieking heard from Epstein's jail cell, according to reports. And we need to know the reliability of those reports and how they correspond with these events, if that shrieking in fact happened. So this is an impeccable article. It's an impeccable article. It actually reports the official finding, but it also, lifts the lid on it so we can see what part of this finding is based on fact. Yeah. And it's no question now that he, according to this,
leaves room for doubt.
Yeah, exactly. But it does leave that degree of room for doubt. Now, the other article, which I think you said was from the Daily Beast, or was it the Daily Caller? I can't remember.
The Daily Beast.
The Daily Beast.
With Michael Baden.
Baden, exactly. So that will give us an opportunity now to see what another pathologist who has this opportunity to examine all this information and whether he comes to the same view. So, we're going to get closer to the truth.
If he releases,
his findings. If he releases his findings. Now, about the story about these guards being asleep. Well, all I can say about that is I am astonished. I'm absolutely astonished. This is from Business Insider.
Yeah.
That I'm absolutely astonished. As I said, I would have thought that they would be absolutely ultra careful with someone like Jeffrey Epstein, who had already supposedly, or allegedly, or so it's been reported, tried to commit suicide, given how important the case concerning him was. That they would be careful, in his case, to make sure that the people who were guarding him were wide awake. I mean, it seems amazing that that's so. But, the fact that the guards were asleep is not the only thing that would have had to go wrong for this whole suicide watch to fail. There are many, many things, multiple breakdowns in this system. Now, can I say, and, we come back to the question of conspiracy theories. If somebody, and this is not from me, I think it was Fred Weir, who's an American journalist based in Moscow. I think it was Fred Weir pointed out, if something like this happened in a Russian prison, if someone like Jeffrey Epstein died in these kind of circumstances in a Russian prison, there would, of course, also be swirling conspiracies about how he came to die. And the New York Times would be at the forefront of spreading.
I don't know if there would be any conspiracy theories, Alexander. I just think they would say Putin did it.
Well, there you go. Well, there you go. But as I said, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I mean, it would be a conspiracy theory because that would be a conspiracy, but that's what they would say.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying, this is the difference. I'm not saying, anybody here murdered Epstein. All I am saying is at this moment in time, there is still room for doubt. Maybe those doubts will be resolved. I have always thought, I've always said throughout our videos, ever since he died, that I thought it was most likely that he probably did die. And that he probably did commit suicide. In fact, I'm pretty certain he did die. And I'm fairly certain that he committed suicide. But there is still room for doubt at this stage, at this very early stage of this very fraught investigation. Of course there is. And I again say to our viewers, any one of our viewers who wants to challenge or question my opinions about that, they are entirely free and within their rights to do so.
No, I mean there's a lot of articles and a lot of opinions out there as far as his death, if it really did happen, that he was swapped out by these powerful forces. There's some theories, and some viewers have sent me emails on this and articles on this. There are some theories that say that it was the Trump hierarchy, the Trump powers that be, that swapped him out in order to get him to a safe place so he could divulge the information that he knows. There's other theories that said it was the Clinton mafia and the Clinton machine that swapped him out in order to shut him up and to get to all his the evidence that he has and all the videos and recordings, to get to those and to destroy those. I mean, and then of course there's the fact that he may have been intelligence, Mossad, British intelligence, CIA, who knows what, and he's been taken, whisked away by these intelligence agencies, whichever one it is, and he's now in their hands. So, I mean, once again, this may be a whole nother video to look into, perhaps maybe next week if we want to go down these different paths. Yes. But here's one, and to close it out, here's one, not a conspiracy theory, but I think an article, once again from Zero Hedge, that definitely points to the fact that Epstein knew the walls were closing in on him. Now, it doesn't explain to me why he would be in France and then come back to the U.S. He had a feeling that eventually they were going to get to him and that they were going to arrest him. But in this article, Alexander, from Zero Hedge, it says, cover up. Epstein shipped $100K cement mixer to Pedo Island weeks before crush and expose. So in other words, Alexander, weeks before the expose that kind of from the Miami Herald that set this whole thing in motion, came into effect, it seems that Epstein was looking to, just cover up and cement everything over at what has been dubbed Orgy Island. What do you make of this story, Alexander?
Well, it's another very interesting piece in the puzzle. I mean, it does actually look like a literal cover-up of something, and one wonders what.
No, literal cement cover-up.
Cover-up, exactly. And as I said, one wonders what. And by the way, I am inclined to agree with you. I think he was aware that the walls were closing in, and it's very interesting that he came back to the United States.
That's the part that I don't get. If you're aware, you could do like a Roman Polanski.
Well, absolutely. You can
sit in France or wherever, Switzerland.
Or another obvious place where he could have gone, I would have thought, was Israel. And I mean, he's Jewish. He was Jewish, so he could have got immediately Israeli citizenship. And Israel doesn't extradite people, so he would have been safe in Israel. And that has nothing to do with any possible connection to Mossad. It's simply, that it was an available bolt hole to him because of his ethnicity and because of Israel's well-established policies. But, it is interesting that he came to the United States. Maybe he thought he could bluff it out. Maybe he thought that the powerful people that he knew would protect him. Maybe he was busy covering up things at this island. And it does, as I said, look very much like a cover-up, a literal cover-up, because he was hoping that he would be able to fight off all of these allegations and that he needed to cover up something on the island to achieve that. I don't know. There is a big piece of the puzzle here. And that's why, as I said before, we need a proper investigation. Entering into Jeffrey Epstein's mind is going to be a complicated thing, given what a secretive and mysterious man he clearly was. But I don't think it's impossible. And I think, again, for the purpose of this investigation and for the purpose of achieving some kind of closure to this, which is a satisfactory closure, which answers the questions that many people are asking, I think we need to have all of this investigated and looked at properly. So we need to know what all these people with the cement mixers were doing on his island, Little St. James. We need to know who he met while he was in Paris and what he was saying to these people. We need to know what he was, I think, saying to his lawyers, frankly. I mean, there may be some issues of confidentiality there, but it's important to stress that he is dead. And if the lawyers possess information that implicates other people, there may be grounds to obtain that information. So, there's a lot to really investigate here, and I think that's what we should be focusing on now. I really do hope that this investigation proceeds. I really do hope that we have a full and clear explanation of what happened to Epstein in that prison cell, of why he came to the United States from France, of what he was doing on this island, of who his various associates were, of who else was implicated in the various things that he was doing. And I do hope that we see this thing proceed to a full and proper outcome according to law, with due process properly followed.
Yeah, the shipment arrived in Epstein's Island on November 7th of 2018, 21 days before Julie Brown's expose was published in the Miami Herald, and 23 days before Epstein allegedly began to try to pay off witnesses. Considering both the scope of Brown's article and the urgency of the shipment, yes, the possibility that the cement mixer was used to literally cover up evidence cannot be discounted. Many have speculated that Epstein had underground tunnels or facilities on his island, while the drone footage reveals what appear to be several hillside doors.
Well, there you are. I mean, I would point out that it's absolutely incredible that it seems that the FBI didn't visit this island until after Epstein was dead.
Well, could there be legal issues as to why they couldn't visit it, perhaps? Maybe they had to wait for him to be dead? I mean, is that a possibility?
No, I don't see that at all. I mean, this island is supposed to be a crime scene. I would have thought that the police, which is what the FBI are fully within their rights to inspect a crime scene. And I'm sure they could have got warrants to come to inspect it, and it seems incredible that they didn't. But what you've been saying about, him trying to pay off witnesses, cover up parts of the island, literally it would seem, with concrete, all suggests that at that point he was planning to make a fight of this thing and hadn't realized the extent to which it was all, that the game was basically fully up. And that's probably why he came to Paris. He may have been overconfident at that stage, but we don't yet know. And there may be other explanations. And again, I invite people, our viewers, to come to tell us what those explanations are, or what they think those explanations are. And as I said, we're absolutely open to that kind of debate and dialogue, and we will take anything that anybody says very seriously.
Finally, Alexander, what are the chances that the New York Medical Examiner is going to show everything that they have as far as the autopsy, in order to kind of shut the book on any conspiracy theories that he may not be dead, or that this was sort of murder, strangulation, or something like that? I mean, what are the chances that they'll just say, here you guys go, we're releasing all that we have to the public?
Well, if they don't release all that information, then I guarantee that those what the New York Times refers to as conspiracy theories will continue and will gain force. If the New York medical examiner is confident of her findings, then she should release the information upon which those findings are based. That's my advice to her if she's listening to this program. Maybe she is.
Release everything. I mean, is
release everything
there, or can they do it?
Release everything. Well, why keep it back? Why keep it back? No doubt. Well, there may be in relation to some of the guards some concerns about, legal concerns.
Can that be redacted? I mean, I'm sure there are parts.
Well, of course they can be redacted, and if there are legal concerns, we should be told what they are. But the greatest possible degree of transparency in this case ought to be mandatory if the real concern is to dispel conspiracy theories. If there isn't that greatest possible degree of transparency, people are going to assume, perhaps rightly, that something has been covered up.
Okay. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below and make sure to smash that like button as well. You can get a copy of this video in audio format. Follow us on iTunes and on Soundcloud. And don't forget, donate to us on PayPal, Patreon, and we are now on Subscribestar. The links are in the description box down below. And of course, go to the Duran shop and pick up some merchandise, like some really cool magic mugs that will improve your IQ, your geopolitical IQ by hundreds of points, and may actually lead you to crack this Epstein case. The more you see these mugs, the more I think you'll be able to crack this case.
Absolutely. After all, I mean, look at the kind of people who we have on these mugs. I mean, this is Sergei Lavrov, the world's greatest foreign minister, in my opinion. And this is the badge of the Alpha Force, the world's most effective, supposedly, special forces unit, the special forces unit of Russia, the most elite special forces unit of Russia, who single-handedly have done the most amazing things, fighting terrorists all over the world. So there we go. And they are fantastic mugs. I mean, I've spoken many times about these mugs and what wonderful mugs they are, how they're 15 ounces, how they're beautiful porcelain, how they balance wonderfully in the hand, how they refresh you and invigorate you when you drink from them. I would be lost without my mugs. I would certainly not be able to get my mind around something like Epstein and Russiagate and Brexit and all these other things that we talk about on our programs if I wasn't drinking all the time from mugs like this. So if you really want to understand things like this, well, please help yourself to these mugs. And of course, when I drink from these mugs, I not only do these programs, Alex, I do books with you. We collaborate on books together, on Russiagate, on Brexit, which you can find, in which we explain and analyze brilliantly, if I may say, or these complicated and intricate stories. And of course, we do so while we wear wonderful shirts like the one you're wearing and the one I'm wearing, with our own double-headed eagle there, pointing east and west, covering all points of the compass, 100% cotton. You can see how smart and elegant we both look in them. Many people have commented on this when I go, walking with our dogs, when I attend elegant receptions, when I'm drinking English sparkling wine whilst in a stately home, drinking singly, dressed in a polo shirt like this. So go to our shop, help yourself, buy the wonderful things that are there, not just shirts, but stickers and hats and all kinds of wonderful things. Help yourself, help the Duran, and Alex will tell you how.
Yeah, the Duran shop. The link is in the description box down below, duranshop.com. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.